I thought seeing Ilara Voss again would feel like revenge, like I'd finally get to stand in front of the girl who broke my heart and prove I had survived her. But then she showed up at my clinic in the middle of a storm, soaked and holding her chest like she couldn't breathe. And suddenly I was 17 again. The night Ilara Voss came back into my life, the rain was hitting the clinic windows hard enough to sound personal. I had already turned off the front desk lamp. The waiting room smelled faintly like antiseptic, wet umbrellas, and Mrs. Alvarez's peppermint candies, because she believed our clinic needed warmth, and apparently warmth came individually wrapped in plastic. My last patient had left 20 minutes earlier. My back ached, my hair was half falling out of its clip. I was one signature away from going home, heating leftover soup and pretending my life was exactly as peaceful as I had built it to look. Then someone knocked on the glass door. Not a normal knock. 3 sharp hits. Desperate. I froze with my pen hovering over a discharge form. Through the rain-streaked glass, I saw a woman standing under the weak, yellow porch light. One hand pressed against her chest, the other braced on the doorframe like the whole world had tilted. For one wild second, I thought the storm had dragged a memory out of me and placed it outside. Then she lifted her face. Ilara Voss. My body knew her before my brain allowed it. Even soaked from the rain, even paler than I remembered, even with her dark hair stuck to her cheeks and her expensive coat clinging to her shoulders, she still had that impossible Voss girl stillness. Like panic was something that happened around her, never inside her. Except her eyes were wide, and when she saw me through the glass, her mouth parted like my name hurt. I should have moved immediately. I was a physician assistant. Someone was at the clinic door after hours holding her chest. But for half a heartbeat, I was back in the east hallway of Alder Bay High, standing with a folded letter in my hand while everyone watched. Ilara in her white graduation week cardigan, Ilara with her perfect ponytail and perfect grades and perfect smile that never quite reached her eyes. Ilara looking at my confession letter like it was something embarrassing stuck to her shoe. "Belle, don't make this weird." That was what she had said, in front of everyone. Don't make this weird. The rain hit the glass again, and Ilara swayed. That snapped me back. I unlocked the door and pulled it open. "Ilara?" She gave me a small, breathless laugh that did not sound like laughter at all. "Hi, Belle." Then her knees buckled. I caught her before she hit the floor. Of course I did, because apparently my survival instincts were less powerful than my medical training and my stupid, traitorous hands. She was cold from the rain, but not as cold as she pretended to be. Her pulse raced beneath my fingers. "Ilara, look at me," I said, guiding her inside. "What happened?" "I couldn't breathe." "How long?" "I don't know." "Chest pain?" "Yes. No." Her lashes fluttered. "Maybe." That was not helpful, but it was very Ilara. Even in possible cardiac distress, she sounded like she was negotiating with a hostile interviewer. I led her to exam room 2, the one with the least offensive lighting, and helped her sit on the paper-covered table. Her coat dripped steadily onto the floor. "Any sharp pain? Pressure? Numbness? Dizziness?" "Yes." "To which one?" She blinked. I waited. She looked down at her own chest as if hoping it would submit a written report. "Dizziness," she said finally. "Okay, and the chest pressure?" "It's near the heart." "That is where most people keep it." Her eyes flicked to mine. For a second, the corner of her mouth almost moved. Almost. I told myself not to notice. I took her vitals. Blood pressure elevated, but not alarming. Oxygen normal. No fever. Pupils normal. No signs of acute distress, except the obvious fact that Ilara Voss was sitting in my clinic after 10 years, soaked from rain and looking at me like I was the dangerous symptom. "Breathe in," I said, placing the stethoscope against her back. She inhaled too quickly. "Slowly." She tried again. My hand stayed steady because my body had spent years learning how to perform calm, even when my heart wanted to do something humiliating. Her lungs sounded clear. I moved around to listen to her heart. The second I stepped back, her breathing hitched. Not dramatically, not enough for anyone else to notice, but I noticed things for a living. "Alara," I said carefully, "does it get worse when I move away?" Her gaze snapped to mine. "No." I looked at the pulse oximeter clipped to her finger. Her heart rate had jumped. I stepped closer again. The number began to drop. Slowly. Ridiculously. I stared at it. She stared at me. I stepped back one more time because apparently I was a scientist now, and my laboratory was the woman who once shattered my dignity. Her pulse rose again. Alara closed her eyes. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Look at me like that." "Like what?" "Like you know I'm lying." I took the stethoscope out of my ears. "Alara, I don't know what you're doing." "Good. But I know your oxygen is fine, your lungs are clear, and your heart does not seem to be the problem." Her mouth tightened. "That sounds reassuring." "It would be if you didn't look disappointed." "I'm not disappointed." "You came to a clinic in a storm because you couldn't breathe, and now you're offended that your lungs are working?" "I'm complex." "You're evasive." "That too." And there it was, the old Alara, the polished answer, the little flash of wit, the expression that made people forgive her because she made distance feel elegant. I hated that my chest hurt. I hated more that I remembered how much I used to love when she said something sharp, just to see if I could keep up. I turned to the counter and pulled a towel from the bottom drawer. "Dry your hair before you actually get sick." She accepted it, but didn't use it. Her eyes dropped to my left wrist. I knew what she was looking at before she said anything, the faint scar near the bone. It was thin now, almost silver. I had gotten it the day after the rejection, when I slipped behind the school gym carrying a box of old theater props because I was too busy crying to notice the broken mirror inside. Not dramatic, not poetic, just clumsy heartbreak with a medical bill. Alara's voice softened. "You still have that." My fingers curled. "I have a lot of skin. Some of it scars." She swallowed. The rain filled the silence. Then she whispered, "You still hate me, don't you?" I should have said no. That would have been mature. I should have said, "I don't think about you." That would have been dignified. Instead, I folded my arms and said, "Right now I am trying to decide whether you need observation or a very honest diary." Her laugh came out unsteady. Then she looked at me with something that wasn't arrogance. It wasn't even the coolness I had spent years assigning to her in my memory so I could survive loving her. It was guilt. That scared me more than the chest pain, because guilt meant there was a story I didn't know, and I had spent 10 years healing from the version I did. I discharged Alara with instructions to rest, hydrate, and seek emergency care if the symptoms returned or worsened. I said it in my cleanest professional voice. She listened with her wet hair falling over one shoulder and her hands folded in her lap like a student in trouble. At the door, she paused. "You work late?" "It's a clinic. People keep getting inconveniently human." "You always talked like that." "Like what?" "Like you're angry and kind at the same time." The words hit too close to places she no longer had permission to touch. I opened the door wider. "Good night, Alara." She gave me a small nod, stepped out into the rain, then stopped under the porch light. "Belle?" I looked at her even though I knew better. "What?" She seemed to fight herself for the words. Then she said, "I didn't come here because I thought you were the closest clinic." I waited. Her face closed. "Never mind." Then she walked into the rain, leaving wet footprints on my floor and a question in my chest that refused to dry. The next morning, everyone in Alder Bay knew Alara Voss had come to my clinic. That was the problem with small coastal towns. Rain could flood half the streets, the power could go out by the pier, someone's boat could detach and drift toward the marina like it had personal goals, but gossip moved faster than emergency services. By 9, Mrs. Alvarez had already heard 3 versions. Version 1. Ilara Voss had returned with a rare tropical disease, despite the fact that the most tropical thing about Alder Bay was the pineapple air freshener in Mr. Duran's taxi. Version 2. I had saved Ilara's life using only a stethoscope and the power of unresolved tension, which Mrs. Alvarez delivered with a straight face while refilling cotton balls. Version 3. Ilara was secretly engaged to a billionaire and had fainted from pre-wedding nerves. That one feels lazy, I said, signing lab requests. Mrs. Alvarez leaned against the counter, 72 years old and more dangerous than any diagnostic machine we owned. My money is on heartbreak. Your money should be on restocking tongue depressors. I saw the way she looked at you. You saw her for 8 seconds through a window. I have cataracts, not stupidity. I looked up. She smiled sweetly and pushed the cotton jar toward me. At 10:30, the clinic door opened. Ilara walked in wearing cream trousers, a navy blouse, and sunglasses she did not need indoors, unless she was trying to protect herself from consequences. Mrs. Alvarez looked at me. I looked at the ceiling. The ceiling offered no guidance. Ilara approached the desk with the dignity of a woman who absolutely had not appeared at this exact clinic less than 12 hours ago, claiming she could not breathe. "Good morning," she said. Mrs. Alvarez's smile sharpened. "Back from the dead?" Ilara removed her sunglasses slowly. "I had dizziness." "Today or yesterday?" Ilara paused. I closed the patient file in front of me. Room 2. She followed me without argument. That was new. In high school, Ilara had always looked like she knew exactly where she was going. Even when she didn't, people moved around her as if she did. Now she walked behind me like someone approaching a door she had no right to knock on twice. Inside the exam room, I washed my hands too thoroughly. "What's going on?" "Dizziness." "You said that?" "Yes." "When did it start?" "When I woke up." "Did you eat breakfast?" "Yes." "What?" "Coffee." "That is not breakfast." "It was a large coffee." I turned. She looked almost pleased with herself. "Ilara." "What?" "You came to a medical clinic to report dizziness after having only coffee?" "It was concerning dizziness." "It was caffeine and no food." To be fair, I was also emotionally unsettled. I stared at her. She stared back. Then she looked away first. That was the first crack. Small. Quick. Gone if I blinked. I checked her blood pressure. Normal. Heart rate slightly high, but it dropped when I sat beside her instead of standing across the room. This time she noticed me noticing. "Don't say it." "I haven't said anything." "You have a face." "Most clinicians do." "Your face is judging me." "My face is wondering why your pulse thinks I'm medication." Pink touched the tips of her ears. I had not seen Ilara Voss blush since junior year, when our English teacher praised her poem in class, and Ilara tried to look bored while her ears betrayed her. The memory landed so softly that I almost let it stay. Then I remembered the hallway, and the letter, and the way laughter had followed me to the bathroom. I stepped back. Her pulse rose, her jaw tightened. "Interesting," I said. "It's not." "It's medically interesting. It's medically annoying. On that we agree." She looked at me with that almost smile again, and I hated how quickly my anger adjusted around it, making room. I told her to eat actual food, hydrate, and stop treating caffeine like a personality. She slid off the exam table. At the door, she paused. "You're good at this." "My job?" "Being calm when people are inconveniently human." I didn't answer. She looked like she wanted to say more, but then her phone rang. The name on the screen was visible for 1 second. Mother. Ilara's face changed. Not much, but enough The softness vanished. Her shoulders squared. Her mouth became a line. She declined the call. I should go. Alara. She stopped. Are you okay? The question escaped before I could turn it into something safer. Her hand tightened around her phone. Then she gave me the smile I remembered from school assemblies, scholarship luncheons, photographs in the local paper. A perfect smile. A locked door in the shape of a mouth. I'm always okay, Belle. And because I had once believed that lie, I said nothing as she left. The third visit was a sore throat. The fourth was a headache. The fifth was a strange heaviness in my limbs, which turned out to be what most people called fatigue after hosting an investor dinner, managing contractors at the Voss Inn, arguing with her mother, and sleeping 3 hours. By the sixth visit, I had developed a private theory. Alara Voss was either experiencing stress-related symptoms, avoiding someone, or using my clinic as the world's most medically unnecessary confessional booth. Possibly all three. She denied everything. Badly. I have a cough, she said on a Thursday afternoon, standing in my exam room with no cough in evidence. Cough for me. She looked offended. On command? That is generally how symptom demonstration works. I don't perform. You literally used to perform at every school assembly. That was different. You sang Somewhere Over the Rainbow in a white dress while half the football team cried. One player had allergies. Alara? She coughed. It was the weakest sound I had ever heard from a human being with working lungs. I wrote nothing on the chart. She narrowed her eyes. You're not writing. I don't want the chart to feel lied to. She pressed her lips together. The silence lasted 3 seconds before she laughed. Not the elegant laugh, not the public laugh, a real one. It surprised both of us. It was quiet and breathy, and it changed her face completely. For 1 second, I saw the girl I had loved before she learned how to survive being watched. Then she stopped laughing, as if she had realized she had given me something. I turned toward the sink. Professionalism, I had learned, was sometimes just grief with hand sanitizer. Her visits became a rhythm neither of us admitted. Monday dizziness, Wednesday sore throat, Friday chest pressure, which she described as not pain exactly, more like an emotional weather event. I told her that was not a clinical term. She said it should be. The absurdity helped. It made her presence less dangerous. It let me treat her like a strange patient instead of the first girl who had taught me my heart could become public property. The town noticed anyway. At the grocery store, Mrs. Patel asked whether I had discovered what was wrong with poor Alara. Patient privacy, I said. She nodded solemnly. Of course. My cousin thinks it's anemia. At the bakery, the cashier slipped an extra muffin into my bag and whispered, "For the miracle doctor." At the clinic, Mr. Henson, our oldest patient, and the only man I knew who could turn a blood pressure check into a town hall meeting, leaned close and said, "That Voss girl isn't sick." I raised an eyebrow. He tapped the side of his nose. "She's allergic to loneliness." I almost dropped the cuff. The worst part was that I was starting to agree. Alara never asked for anything directly. She arrived with symptoms like offerings. She sat in room 2, watched me wash my hands, and answered every medical question with controlled politeness until I asked something real. Are you sleeping? Are you eating? Is someone pressuring you? Do you feel safe at home? Then she became smoke, slipping away, changing the subject, making a dry comment, paying quietly, leaving before I could decide whether to follow. But she remembered things. That was what undid me. Not the beauty, not the expensive coat, not the way every person in the waiting room seemed to sit straighter when she entered. It was the details. One evening, I came out of an exam room after treating a child with a fever and found a paper bag on the nurse's station. Inside was a container of soup from the little Thai place by the marina. a bottle of the ginger drink I used to buy during exam week in high school, and a note with no signature. You forget dinner when you're worried. I stared at it for too long. Mrs. Alvarez appeared beside me like a ghost with reading glasses. Oh, she said, that is terminal. Go away. She has a serious case. Of what? Mrs. Alvarez patted my arm. Remembering. I didn't eat the soup for 12 minutes. Then I ate all of it and hated myself for enjoying the ginger drink. 2 days later, our clinic received 3 boxes of pediatric supplies we had been trying to afford for months. No donor name. Just a shipping confirmation and a note saying, for community health outreach. Dr. Kellen, our supervising physician, looked ready to cry. I looked at the invoice paper and felt something cold move through me. Ilara. I knew it was her before anyone said anything. That should have felt kind. It did for half a second. Then the old wound twisted. Because Ilara Voss had always had power where I didn't. Money, name, reputation, rooms that opened when she entered. In high school, she had used silence and public distance to make me powerless. Now, she was using generosity the same way, quietly, secretly, without asking me, without letting me choose whether I wanted her help. That night, when she came in complaining of a strange pressure near the heart, I did not smile. I closed the exam room door. What exactly hurts today? She looked at me carefully, reading the room the way she probably read hostile board meetings. My chest. Is the pressure sharp, dull, burning, or named Bell? Her lips parted. The joke landed too hard because neither of us was ready for the truth in it. Bell, did you donate supplies to the clinic? Her expression froze. There it was. Confirmation. I folded my arms. Ilara? It was anonymous. That is not the comforting defense you think it is. The clinic needed them. Yes, we did. Then what's the problem? The problem is that you keep deciding things around me instead of speaking to me. Her face tightened. I wasn't trying to. Buy forgiveness? No. Buy access? No. Make yourself feel better? That hit. I saw it hit. She looked down. I wanted to take it back, which made me angrier. Because I was always the one softening the edge after she cut me. In the hallway, in my memories, in every imaginary conversation where I finally said the perfect thing and then immediately forgave her when she looked sad. Not this time. You don't get to keep appearing here with fake symptoms and secret donations and half-finished sentences, I said. You don't get to make yourself my problem again just because you feel guilty. Her eyes lifted. I am not faking everything. The room went quiet. For the first time, Ilara looked scared of what she had admitted. My anger shifted, not gone, just forced to share space with concern. What aren't you faking? She rubbed her thumb against her wrist, a small, restless motion I had never seen from her. I get dizzy, sometimes, and I can't breathe. It feels like my body forgets how. When? Her throat moved. When I'm at the inn? When my mother talks about the gala? When Mara comes over with contracts? When people look at me like I'm supposed to save something I'm not sure I want anymore. Mara. That name had been floating around town all week. Mara Chen was elegant, wealthy, and connected to the kind of investors who could keep the Voss Inn from becoming condos with nautical wallpaper. She had arrived in Alder Bay with a sleek black car and the smile of a woman who had never had to explain herself twice. People had already decided she and Ilara looked good together. People loved deciding things for women who were already drowning. Ilara, I said more softly, those sound like panic attacks. Her laugh was short, empty. No, I don't do that. You don't do panic? I manage crises for a living. Managing crises does not make you immune to having a nervous system. It should. That's not how biology works. Biology has terrible branding. Despite myself, I almost smiled. She saw it and looked away like the almost smile hurt. The room became too small. I could feel the pull between us, that ridiculous, humiliating, familiar gravity. It was different now, older and heavier. Not a crush, not fantasy. Something with teeth. Something with memory. "Why do you keep coming here?" I asked. She didn't answer. "Ilara." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Because when I'm here, I can breathe." My heart betrayed me so violently I had to look at the counter. She laughed once, embarrassed. "I know how that sounds." "Do you?" "Yes." "Good, because it sounds like a lawsuit waiting to happen." This time she really laughed, and I did too, just once, before we both remembered we were standing on the edge of something. I stepped back. Her smile faded. The pulse monitor, still clipped to her finger, beeped faster. I looked at it. She groaned. "I hate that machine." "It's very honest. It's invasive. It is a pulse oximeter. It has an agenda." "Ilara, your pulse is not gossip. In this town, everything is gossip." She wasn't wrong, and the gossip was getting worse. By the end of the month, the clinic board had questions. Not formal accusations, not yet. Just careful phrases. Increased visibility. Patient boundaries. Community perception. Dr. Kellen looked uncomfortable while discussing it, which made me feel worse because he liked me. He trusted me. He had fought to keep me on staff when funding cuts almost eliminated my position. "Belle," he said gently, "I know you're careful, but Ilara Voss is noticeable. That is one word for it. She's been here 9 times in 4 weeks. I'm aware. She has other options. I'm also aware." He sighed. "I'm not accusing you of anything. But with the funding review coming up, we can't afford questions about special treatment." Special treatment. The phrase crawled under my skin, because the truth was, I had given Ilara special treatment. Not medically. I charted properly. I examined appropriately. I kept everything professional on paper. But emotionally, I had given her space in my head I couldn't afford. That afternoon, I told Mrs. Alvarez to assign Ilara to Dr. Kellen if she came in again. Mrs. Alvarez looked at me over her glasses. "Cowardice is bad for circulation. Do not diagnose me." I learned from the best. Ilara came in at 4. Of course she did. Rowan was there dropping off transfer paperwork from the ambulance service. Rowan had kind eyes, rolled-up sleeves, and the kind of open warmth that made the waiting room feel less fluorescent. He made me laugh by telling me about a tourist who thought jellyfish stings could be cured with artisan vinegar. I was still laughing when Ilara walked in. Her eyes moved from Rowan to me, then back to Rowan, then to my smile. Something flickered across her face. Not anger, not possessiveness. Pain. She covered it quickly. "Belle," she said. I picked up a chart. "Dr. Kellen can see you today." Her posture changed so subtly I almost missed it. "Why?" "He has availability." "I came to see you." The waiting room went silent. Even the vending machine seemed to hold its breath. Mrs. Alvarez slowly turned a page in a magazine upside down. I kept my voice level. "You came to the clinic. Dr. Kellen is the supervising physician." Ilara's mouth tightened. Rowan, bless him, sensed enough emotional carnage to step backward. "I'll drop these in the office," he said. Ilara watched him go, then she looked at me. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." "You're lying." I smiled, and it felt ugly. "Maybe I learned from you." Her face went pale. I regretted it instantly. That was my flaw. I could be calm for everyone else, but with Ilara, my restraint became a blade. I told myself it was dignity when sometimes it was just fear dressed better. She nodded once. Dr. Kellen is fine. She followed Mrs. Alvarez down the hall. I did not move. I stood behind the desk, feeling every eye in the waiting room pretend not to watch me. 10 minutes later, Dr. Kellen came out and pulled me aside. She's asking for you. I know. She says she wants to leave. Then she can leave. He gave me a look. Belle. I hated that he used the voice kind people used when they saw you limping and you insisted you were walking normally. I went to room 1. Ilara sat on the exam table, hands folded, mask perfectly back in place. What's wrong today? I asked. She looked at me. For a second, I thought she would say headache or throat or chest or some invented anatomical tragedy. Instead, she said, Rowan makes you laugh. I blinked. That is not a symptom. It felt like one. My mouth opened, then closed. She looked away, embarrassed by herself. I'm sorry, that was inappropriate. Yes, I know. Professionally inappropriate. Yes. And personally confusing. Her eyes returned to mine. There was no polish now, just regret. I don't know how to do this, she said. Do what? Want your attention without hurting you. The answer stole the air out of the room. I hated her for saying it softly. I hated her for saying it too late. I hated that I believed her. You don't get my attention by pretending to be sick, I said. I know. Or donating things. I know. Or making jealousy sound like chest pain. Her mouth twitched despite the pain in her eyes. That one was new for me too. I sighed, exhausted by her, by myself, by the part of me that wanted to sit beside her and the part that wanted to make her leave before I became 17 again. Ilara, you need an actual clinician for panic symptoms, counseling, stress management, someone who isn't tied to... I gestured between us because naming the past felt like touching a bruise. This. I tried. When? In the city. And? I spent 50 minutes explaining stress responses to the therapist so she wouldn't ask me about my mother. That sounded exactly like Ilara. You are a nightmare patient. I'm worse in conference rooms. Why come back to Alder Bay? Her face closed halfway. My mother's health declined. The inn's debt got worse. I was the only one who could handle the investors. And Mara Chen? Ilara's gaze dropped. Mara is helping structure a partnership. People think she's more than that. People think a lot of things. Is she? No. The answer came quickly, too quickly to be performative. Then, quieter, Ilara said, My mother wants her to be. There it was, the system around Ilara, the polished family, the inn, the donor plaques, the old money pretending not to rot under the salt air. Ilara had come home to save a building full of expectations, and somehow my clinic had become the only place where she could fall apart in small, medically coded ways. I understood. That was the worst part. I understood why someone would rather say dizziness than loneliness. I can't be your secret comfort, I said. Her eyes shone, but she didn't cry. Ilara Voss looked like crying would violate a contract clause. I know. Do you? Yes. Because I was your secret once. The silence after that was brutal. She flinched. Not dramatically, just enough. I had never said it out loud to her. In high school, I wasn't even granted the dignity of a private heartbreak. I confessed in writing because spoken words felt too dangerous. I put my whole, young, trembling heart into a letter and slipped it into Ilara's locker after school. By lunch the next day, everyone knew. Not the whole letter, thank God. Just enough. Belle wrote Ilara a love letter. Belle thought Ilara Voss would want her, Bell made it weird. I still remembered the hallway after last bell, Alara standing near the trophy case, people hovering because teenagers could smell blood beneath perfume and body spray. I had walked up to her, shaking, and asked if we could talk. Alara looked at me. For 1 second, I thought she might say yes. Then her face became unfamiliar. Belle, don't make this weird. The words were not shouted. They were worse than shouted. They were clean, cold, designed to end me efficiently. I walked away with my throat closed and my hands empty. She left town 2 weeks after graduation. I spent the summer becoming someone no one could embarrass that way again. In exam room 1, adult Alara looked at me like she had been carrying that hallway too. "I know," she whispered. "No," I said. "You remember. That's different." She pressed her lips together. I waited. For once, I needed her to be brave first. But her phone buzzed. She looked down. Mother. Again. Her entire body shut like a door. "I have to go," she said. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Of course you do." "Belle." "No. Go." She stood, but she didn't move toward the door. "I'm trying." "I know." Her eyes softened with relief. Then I finished, "But I am not a clinic room you can hide in while trying." That time, she left without another word. For 3 days, Alara did not come in. The clinic felt quieter. Not peaceful, quieter. There was a difference. Mrs. Alvarez stopped making comments, which was how I knew things were bad. Rowan came by twice. Once for paperwork, once with coffee. He asked if I wanted to grab dinner after my shift. He was kind, direct, easy to stand beside. I wanted to want him. That would have been convenient. Instead, I found myself looking at the door every time rain darkened the windows. On the 4th day, Dr. Kellen sent me to the Voss Inn. "House call," he said. "We don't do house calls." "We do when Mrs. Voss threatens to move the entire gala's health sponsorship to North Harbor Medical." I stared at him. He grimaced. "Funding review." So that was how I ended up driving along the cliff road at 8 in the evening with a medical bag on the passenger seat and my dignity somewhere under the brake pedal. The Voss Inn stood at the edge of the water like it had been built by someone who wanted to impress the ocean into behaving. White columns, blue shutters, wide porches, old money charm with fresh paint hiding structural panic. Inside, the lobby smelled like lemon polish and lilies. Too many lilies. A woman in pearls met me near the staircase, Mrs. Voss. I had seen her countless times growing up, at fundraisers, award ceremonies, school board meetings. She had the same elegant posture as Alara, but none of Alara's hidden warmth. Her smile made me feel inspected. "Belle Monroe," she said. "Mrs. Voss? I hear you've done well for yourself." People like her always made survival sound mildly surprising. "I'm here for the house call." "Yes, Alara is in the East Wing. She's been overworking herself. These things happen when one has responsibilities." One, not when someone has responsibilities. When one has responsibilities. I followed her through a hallway lined with framed photographs of the inn in better decades. Ribbon cuttings, weddings, governors. A young Alara beside her parents, smiling like a doll trained to please. Mrs. Voss stopped outside a closed sitting room. "I hope her visits to your clinic haven't caused confusion." There it was, the warning in velvet. I kept my face calm. "My concern is patient care." "Of course." Her smile thinned. "But small towns enjoy stories, and stories can damage people." "I'm aware." Her eyes flicked over me. For a moment, I was 17 again, scholarship blazer too tight, standing near the Voss family table at an awards banquet while Mrs. Voss looked through me. Then the sitting room door opened. Alara stood there. She wore a soft gray sweater and no shoes. Her hair was loose. Her face was pale with exhaustion, but when she saw her mother standing near me, something protective sharpened in her eyes. "Mother," she said, "go downstairs." Mrs. Voss lifted one eyebrow. "Ilara?" "I said go downstairs." It was quiet. It was not a request. For the first time, I saw the woman Ilara must have become in conference rooms. Not cold exactly, controlled. Dangerous because she had spent years studying the language of power and could now speak it fluently. Mrs. Voss looked between us. Then she smiled. "Don't take too long. Mara will be here soon." Ilara's jaw flexed. Mrs. Voss left. I stepped into the sitting room and closed the door behind me. The room was dim except for a brass lamp near the window. Rain slid down the glass. A stack of old yearbooks sat open on the floor beside an armchair. Ilara noticed me notice. "It's not what it looks like." "It looks like you're haunting yourself academically." She let out a tired breath. "I was looking for something." "What?" She didn't answer. Her hand drifted toward one of the yearbooks, then stopped. I knelt before she could stop me. Inside the yearbook, tucked between pages, was a folded piece of paper worn soft at the edges. I knew it before I touched it. My handwriting. My heart stopped. "Ilara." "Don't." I lifted the letter. My own words stared back at me, faded but unmistakable. "I used to think liking you was like standing too close to the sun. But now I think maybe it's just the first honest thing I've ever felt." God, I had been so young, so earnest, so doomed. My throat burned. "You kept it?" Ilara stood very still. "For 10 years?" She closed her eyes. "Yes." The room tilted. The hallway I had remembered for years cracked down the middle, not broken enough to free me, but enough to show darkness underneath. "Why?" She opened her eyes. "Because you mattered." She didn't say it, but the words seemed to move through the room anyway. Instead, she whispered, "Because it was the bravest thing anyone ever gave me." I laughed once, sharp and wounded. "You had a strange way of showing appreciation." She flinched. "I know." "No, Ilara, I don't think you do." My hand shook around the letter. "You kept it? You kept the thing everyone laughed at me for? You kept proof that I meant what I said while letting me believe I had disgusted you?" "I didn't think you'd want to hear from me." "You didn't ask." Her face crumpled for half a second before she rebuilt it. "I was a coward." The words fell between us. No excuse, no polish, just truth. My anger had nowhere neat to go. I wanted to demand everything. Why she had said it, why she had left, why she had never once written or called or stood in front of me with even a fraction of the courage I had given her. But before I could speak, her breathing changed. Too fast, too shallow. Her hand pressed against her sternum. I knew that look now. "Ilara." "I'm fine." "No, you're not." "I'm not sick." "No," I said, stepping closer. "You're scared." Her eyes filled. That undid me more than the panic, because no one had told Ilara Voss she was scared. Not gently, not as if fear was allowed to exist inside her without ruining her. I guided her to the armchair. "Feet on the floor. Look at me." She obeyed. "Breathe in for 4. "I hate this." "I know." "I hate that you know." "I know that too." She gave a broken little laugh, then tried to breathe. I crouched in front of her, close enough that her knees almost touched mine. Her pulse fluttered under my fingers when I checked her wrist. Fast. Then slower as she focused on me. The old letter lay on the floor between us. a ridiculous, devastating relic. Her voice shook. "My mother found it." I went still. "What?" "The letter. She found it before I could answer you." Rain tapped the windows harder. Alara stared at the floor. "She said if I encouraged you, if I made a spectacle, she would speak to the scholarship committee. She knew people. She always knew people. She said girls like you couldn't afford rumors." My hand went cold. "She threatened my scholarship?" "And you." Alara's voice cracked. "She said if people believed you were trying to attach yourself to me, she could make sure every recommendation letter mentioned instability, obsession, inappropriate behavior." The room blurred at the edges. "She was bluffing," I said, but I didn't know if I believed it. "Maybe. I was 17. Alara finally looked at me. "I was terrified. Of her, of myself, of everyone finding out that when I read your letter, I wanted to run straight to you." I couldn't breathe now. The irony would have been funnier if it didn't hurt. "You rejected me publicly." "I thought if I made it clean, cruel, final, she would leave you alone." "Clean?" My voice rose. "You humiliated me." "I know." "You made me the joke." "I know." "You let everyone think I was pathetic." "I know." The third "I know" broke. Her tears spilled silently, like she had no idea what to do with them. "I thought I was protecting you," she whispered. "But I was protecting myself, too. I could have found another way. I could have told you. I could have apologized after graduation. I didn't. I chose silence because it was easier than facing what I did to you." There it was, the truth. Not a perfect excuse, not a clean absolution. Something messier. A terrified girl had hurt me to survive. Then an adult woman had kept hurting me by never telling the truth. I stood because crouching near her made me want to forgive faster than she deserved. "Alara," I said, my voice shaking, "you don't get to decide my life for me and call it protection." She nodded, crying harder now, but quietly. Always quietly. "I know. You don't get to keep me close only in rooms where no one can see." "I know. And you don't get to show me the truth only because your body finally forced you to." That one landed deep. She bowed her head. The door opened before either of us could speak. Mara Chen stood in the doorway. She was stunning in a cream coat, her black hair pinned low, diamond earrings catching lamplight like small, cold stars. Her eyes moved from Alara's tears to me holding the old letter. She understood too quickly. That was the danger of intelligent people. They could ruin a room without needing much information. "I'm interrupting," Mara said. Alara stood, wiping her face. "Mara?" "Your mother sent me to find you." Mara's gaze landed on the paper in my hand. "Though I see you found something else." I folded the letter. "This is private." Mara looked at me with an expression that was not unkind. "Nothing is private in a family like this. That's rather the problem." Alara stepped between us. "Don't." Mara's mouth tightened. "I'm not your enemy, Alara." "No, you're my mother's solution." The words were quiet but brutal. Mara absorbed them with impressive grace. Then she looked at me. "You should be careful, Belle. The Voss family has a talent for turning vulnerable girls into unfortunate rumors." Alara went pale. "Mara." "What?" Mara asked. "She deserves to know." I told her. "Everything?" Alara's silence answered. Mara's eyes sharpened. "Did you tell her your mother wasn't the only one who watched that hallway?" My stomach dropped. Alara whispered, "Please don't." Mara looked almost sorry, but she said it anyway. "I was there, Belle. I remember Alara seeing you before she spoke. I remember her choosing the crowd before she chose you." The room went silent. I looked at Alara. Her face was devastated, and I knew Mara did not have the whole story, but she had enough to cut, enough to remind me that regardless of pressure, Alara had still looked at me that day and made a choice. I placed the letter on the side table. "I'm done." Alara stepped forward. "Belle." "No." I backed away. "Not in a clinic room. Not in a hallway. Not in your family's inn. I will not be someone's secret comfort while you decide how much truth you can survive." She looked like I had struck her, but I had spent 10 years bleeding from a wound she called clean. So I left. The week before the gala, Alder Bay became unbearable. Every storefront had a poster for the Voss Inn charity event. Every conversation seemed to include Alara, Mara, the partnership, or a speculation about which wealthy donors would arrive pretending they loved coastal preservation more than tax deductions. At the clinic, we prepared a small health outreach table for the gala because the sponsorship mattered. Dr. Kellen needed me there. I said yes because I loved my work more than I feared awkwardness. At least, that was what I told myself. Alara stopped coming to the clinic. No fake coughs, no suspicious headaches, no pulse monitor with an agenda. The absence should have been a relief. Instead, it sat in the corner of every exam room. I kept treating patients. I kept signing forms. I kept being calm, useful, controlled. My specialty. Mrs. Alvarez watched me with unusual quiet until Friday afternoon, when I snapped the lid onto a sharps container harder than necessary. She said, "You know, dignity is not the same as loneliness." I looked at her. She shrugged. "I'm old. I say things." "I'm not lonely." "No, you are very busy being correct." "That sounds healthy." "It sounds boring." I laughed despite myself. Then I almost cried, which was inconvenient because I had a teenager with an ear infection in room 3. The gala was held on a Saturday night under a tent behind the Voss Inn, facing the water. The rain had stopped, leaving the air cold and clean. String lights hung above round tables. White flowers climbed the tent poles. The inn glowed behind everything like a beautiful patient denying how sick it was. I wore a navy dress I had owned for 3 years and heels that betrayed me by the appetizer table. Our clinic booth stood near the entrance, with pamphlets, blood pressure cards, and a donation box. Mrs. Alvarez insisted on wearing a red scarf and telling donors they looked circulatory, which somehow worked. I was arranging brochures when Rowan appeared with 2 glasses of sparkling water. "You look like you're about to intubate the flower arrangements," he said. "I don't trust lilies." "Reasonable." I accepted the glass. Across the tent, Alara stood beside Mara and Mrs. Voss. She wore black. Of course she did. Simple dress, hair swept back, no jewelry except small silver earrings. She looked composed enough to be carved from the same stone as the cliffs. Mara leaned in to say something. Alara smiled politely, not warmly, not the way she had smiled in exam room 2 when I accused her pulse of gossip. Still, they looked good together. That was the awful part. Mara looked like she fit beside Alara in that world of investors and polished family names. I looked like the clinic representative holding pamphlets about blood pressure and pretending not to watch. Rowan followed my gaze. "Ah." "Do not me." I said 1 syllable. It was judgmental. It was sympathetic. Worse. He smiled softly. "For what it's worth, she's been looking over here every 30 seconds. She has excellent peripheral anxiety. She also looks miserable. She's at a gala. Everyone looks miserable. That's why they serve tiny food." Rowan laughed. Across the tent, Alara saw him make me laugh. Her expression shifted. Not jealousy exactly, more like grief wearing good posture. Then Mrs. Voss touched her arm, and Alara turned away. Dinner began. Speeches followed. A local councilman praised the Voss family's legacy. An investor spoke about heritage tourism. Dr. Kellen gave a kind, brief speech about rural healthcare access, and I felt proud enough to forget my own heartbreak for a minute. Then Mrs. Voss stepped up. She thanked the town. She thanked Mara Chen. She hinted at a partnership that would preserve the Voss name for future generations. Applause. Mara smiled. Alara did not. I felt something shift before anything happened. Maybe because I knew her tells now. The stillness in her shoulders, the way her fingers pressed against her palm, the controlled breath. She was not okay. Mrs. Voss continued. And of course, we are grateful to community partners, including our friends at Alder Bay Clinic, who understand the importance of discretion, care, and service. Discretion. The word was aimed, not obviously, not enough for anyone else to flinch, but I felt it like a hand closing over my mouth. A laugh sounded near the bar. I turned. 3 old classmates stood with wine glasses, faces older but expressions exactly the same. One of them, Tessa Vale, had been there in the hallway 10 years ago. She spotted me and smiled with the lazy confidence of someone who had never been the punchline. "Oh my God, Belle Monroe," she said too loudly. "This is nostalgic." My stomach tightened. Rowan moved slightly closer, but I shook my head. Tessa drifted toward the clinic booth with 2 others following. "I heard you're Alara's personal miracle worker now." I kept my face pleasant. "We provide care to the community." "How sweet." Her smile sharpened. "Remember when you used to provide love letters?" The world narrowed. There it was. 10 years old and still alive because humiliation had roots. Someone nearby laughed awkwardly, not because it was funny, but because public cruelty made people nervous and laughter gave them somewhere to put their hands. I felt 17 again. The tent lights became hallway fluorescents. The music became whispers. My navy dress became a scholarship blazer. I could have walked away. I should have. That was what adult Belle did. Controlled Belle. Dignified Belle. Belle who never made scenes because scenes were where people learned how to hurt you. Then Alara's voice cut across the room. "Enough!" Not loud, but the kind of quiet that made powerful people turn. Alara had stepped away from her mother, from Mara, from the investors, from the safe life arranged like a table setting around her. She walked toward us. Mrs. Voss said, "Alara?" Alara did not stop. Tessa laughed nervously. "We're just joking." "No," Alara said. "You're repeating a lie because it made you feel important in high school, and apparently that was the peak of your personality." A gasp moved through the people nearest us. Under different circumstances, I might have applauded. Quietly, with medical professionalism. Tessa flushed. "Alara, come on. Everyone remembers—" "No," Alara said, and this time her voice carried farther. "Everyone remembers what I let them believe." The tent became silent. My heart slammed against my ribs. Alara looked at me, not asking permission, not asking rescue, just making sure I knew the next part was for me, even if she had to give it to everyone. "In high school," she said, "Belle wrote me a letter. It was honest, brave, and kinder than I deserved. I was scared. I was controlled by my family's expectations, and I was terrified of what it would mean if anyone knew I wanted to say yes." Mrs. Voss's face went white. "Alara, stop!" Alara turned toward her mother. "No." One word. "A lifetime." Then Alara faced the room again. "My mother found the letter and threatened Belle's future. I panicked. I rejected Belle publicly because I thought cruelty would protect us both. But the truth is uglier than that. I protected myself. I let Belle carry shame that should have belonged to me." My hands shook. Rowan quietly took the glass from me before I dropped it. Alara's voice broke, but she kept going. "Belle was not pathetic. She was not inappropriate. She was the bravest person in our school. I was the coward. No one spoke. The ocean moved in the dark beyond the tent. Alara looked at the investors, at Mara, at the town. I won't build the future of this inn on another lie. If this partnership requires me to stand beside a version of myself that never existed, then we don't have a partnership. Mara's face was unreadable. Mrs. Voss looked furious enough to crack. Alara, she said, think carefully. I have, Alara said. That was the problem. I spent 10 years thinking instead of doing the decent thing. Then she looked at me again. Everything inside me went still. I kept going to Belle's clinic because being near her was the only time I could breathe, she said. And that was unfair to her. I turned my fear into symptoms and made her responsible for them. She owes me nothing, not forgiveness, not kindness, not a second chance. My eyes burned. But I am done being quiet where her dignity is concerned. There are moments that do not fix the past, but they reach back and touch it, not to erase it, to tell the younger version of you that someone finally came, that someone finally stood where you once stood alone and said, "No, this shame was never yours." Alara did not look triumphant. She looked terrified, exposed, free in the most expensive way. Mrs. Voss left the tent first. Then 2 investors murmured to each other and followed. The room erupted into whispers. Mara stepped toward Alara. For one tense second, I thought she would be cruel. Instead, Mara sighed. "You know," she said, "there were easier ways to reject my proposal." Alara stared at her. Mara's mouth curved faintly. "Business proposal, Alara. Don't look so hunted." A stunned laugh broke from somewhere. Even Alara almost smiled. Mara glanced at me, then back at Alara. "For what it's worth, I prefer honest disasters to polished ones." She adjusted her coat. "Call me when you're ready to discuss terms that don't require emotional taxidermy." Then she walked away with the calm of a woman who had just saved her dignity and possibly the inn's future in one sentence. I respected her immediately, which was inconvenient because I had been prepared to dislike her. Alara stood alone near the center of the tent. People stared. The old classmates avoided my eyes. Tessa looked like she wanted the floor to develop mercy. I could have gone to Alara. Every foolish, soft part of me wanted to. But I remembered what I'd promised myself. Belle chooses herself first. So I walked outside. Not dramatically, not running, just out into the cold air where the ocean sounded steadier than my heart. I made it to the side porch before I started crying. I hated crying in public. It felt like giving the world evidence. But the porch was dim and the sea wind was loud, and for once I let myself be a person instead of a locked cabinet labeled "Fine." The door opened behind me. I knew it was Alara before she spoke. She stopped several feet away. Good. She had learned something. "Belle." I wiped my face with the heel of my hand and laughed weakly. "Congratulations on destroying a gala with emotional accountability. Very bold theme." Her laugh came out watery. "I think the lilies were already doing damage." I turned. She stood in the porch light, arms wrapped around herself, eyes red but steady. For once, she did not look like the most admired girl in town. She looked like someone who had set down a weight and discovered her hands were shaking. "You didn't have to do all that?" I said. "Yes, I did." "Alara, no." She took one breath. "I didn't do it so you would forgive me. I did it because it was true." That mattered, more than I wanted it to. I looked toward the dark water. "What happens now?" "With the inn?" she asked. "With you." She looked down. "I don't know. My mother may never forgive me. Some investors will leave. Mara might help, or she might decide I'm too much liability in one dress." A small smile touched her mouth. The town will talk. The town was already talking. Yes, but now with better source material. Despite everything, I laughed. Alara's face softened like the sound hurt and healed her at once. Then she said, "I'm sorry, Bill." I closed my eyes. She continued, voice quiet. "I'm sorry for the hallway. I'm sorry for the years after. I'm sorry for coming back and hiding behind symptoms instead of telling you the truth. I'm sorry I made you feel chosen only in private. You deserved better from me when we were 17. You deserve better now." I opened my eyes. The porch light caught the rain still clinging to the railing. "I loved you," I said. Her breath caught. "I know. No, listen." My voice shook, but I kept going. "I loved you in that awful, bright, teenage way where everything feels like forever because you don't know yet how long life is. And when you rejected me, I didn't just lose you. I lost the part of me that believed wanting someone openly was brave." Alara's tears slipped down her cheeks. She did not interrupt. "I rebuilt myself after that," I said. "I became useful, calm, careful. I learned how to leave rooms before anyone could make me feel small in them." "I know." "And then you came back," I whispered. "And suddenly I was that girl again. The one holding a letter." Alara's hand moved like she wanted to reach for me. She stopped herself. "I don't want to be the reason you feel small," she said. "Not ever again. Then don't ask me to make this easy. I won't. I'm not ready to trust you. I know. I'm not ready to call this love again just because you finally told the truth." Her face hurt, but she nodded. "I know. But," I looked at her, "I saw what you did in there." She went very still. "And I believe you meant it." For a moment, she looked like breathing might become possible. That should not have made me ache, but it did. "I don't know how to do this slowly," she admitted. "You learned how to fake 6 illnesses in 1 month. I think you can learn pacing." A small laugh escaped her. "There were not 6. Alara." "Fine. 7 if you count the emotional weather event." "I absolutely count the emotional weather event." Her smile trembled. The distance between us was only a few feet, but it held 10 years. A hallway, a letter, a clinic, a gala, and every version of us that had been too scared to cross it. I did not step forward. Neither did she. That was our first honest beginning. The next week was chaos. Beautiful, terrible chaos. Mrs. Voss temporarily left town to recover from stress, which Mrs. Alvarez translated as sulking with luggage. 2 investors pulled out. 1 stayed. Mara, proving herself both terrifying and useful, restructured the partnership into something that preserved the inn without requiring Alara to perform heterosexual perfection at ribbon cuttings. The town talked until it exhausted itself, then moved on to a fisherman who had accidentally live-streamed himself arguing with a pelican. At the clinic, the board asked fewer questions after several gala donors increased funding in response to Alara's speech. Apparently, public emotional reckoning paired well with healthcare philanthropy. I kept working. Alara kept her distance, not coldly, carefully. She sent no anonymous donations. She made no fake appointments. She did not appear in room 2 claiming her left eyebrow felt medically suspicious, though I suspected she considered it. Instead, she did things properly. She scheduled an intake with a therapist in North Harbor, and because growth was real but inconvenient, texted me 1 line afterward. "Therapy is suspiciously difficult when you don't explain the therapist's job to her." I stared at it for 5 minutes before responding. "Sounds terminal." She replied, "Chronic, probably. I smiled so hard Mrs. Alvarez threw a pen at me. We started slowly, painfully slowly. Coffee at the marina, where we sat across from each other like two people negotiating peace after a very attractive war. Walks near the cliffs, where Alara told me small truths in pieces. How her mother had monitored every friendship. How she had dated boys she barely liked because it made life quieter. How she had read my letter so many times the creases started tearing. How she had almost called me during college, then convinced herself I hated her and had every right to. I told her things too. How I had thrown away every photo from high school except one where she was in the background, laughing at something I had said. How I chose medicine partly because bodies made more sense than people. How I mistook emotional control for dignity because it was easier than admitting I was lonely. We were careful with touch. At first, almost painfully careful. Her fingers brushed mine once when she handed me a coffee lid, and both of us froze like Victorian ghosts. "You okay?" I asked. She looked at our hands. "My pulse is normal." "Show off." "I've been practicing being near you without needing triage." "Very proud." "You sound sarcastic." "I'm deeply moved." She smiled into her cup. That was how healing happened for us. Not in one grand confession, in awkward coffee lids, in honest pauses. In Alara saying, "I don't know how to answer that without hiding," and then trying anyway. In me saying, "I need space," and her giving it without making me feel guilty. A month after the gala, the rain returned. I was closing the clinic late again because apparently my life enjoyed symmetry. The waiting room lights were off. The peppermint bowl was empty. Mrs. Alvarez had left a note on my desk that said, "Eat dinner. Emotionally constipated people need nutrients." I was laughing at it when someone knocked on the glass door. 3 soft taps. My chest tightened before I looked up. Alara stood outside in the rain. No hand pressed to her chest, no dramatic sway, no medical emergency cosplay. Just Alara, in a dark coat, hair damp, holding a small paper bag from the Thai place by the marina. I opened the door. Rain blew in around her. For a second, neither of us spoke. The first night came back to me, the storm, her pale face, my stethoscope. Her pulse betraying what her mouth refused to say. But this Alara looked different, still nervous, still beautiful in that unfair, weatherproof way, but honest. I leaned against the doorframe. "What is it this time?" I asked. "Headache? Chest pain? Mysterious allergy to honesty?" Her smile bloomed slowly. "No." "No?" She shook her head. "I'm not sick." The words landed between us, transformed. Once they had been a shield, now they were an offering. I waited. Alara took a breath. "I just missed you." My heart did something medically unhelpful. I should have made her wait longer. Maybe another 10 years. Maybe until my pride was satisfied, which meant possibly never. Instead, I looked at the rain dripping from her hair onto my clinic porch and said, "You brought food?" "Yes." "Actual food? Not large coffee pretending to be breakfast?" "I've grown." "Debatable." She held up the bag. "Soup, ginger drink, and no secret donations." "That is a strong start." Her eyes softened. "I can leave it here if you want." There it was again. The difference. She gave me the choice. Such a small thing, such an enormous thing. I stepped back and opened the door wider. Alara's breath caught. I pretended not to notice because kindness sometimes meant letting someone keep a little dignity. She walked in. The clinic smelled like rain and antiseptic and Thai basil. I locked the door behind her. We sat on the waiting room floor because the chairs were uncomfortable and because neither of us seemed ready for exam room 2. She handed me soup. I handed her napkins. The rain kept tapping the windows like an old story asking to be let in. Alara looked at the stethoscope still hanging around my neck. Do you ever get tired of listening to everyone's heart? I thought about it. Sometimes. She nodded. Then, very softly, she asked, "Can you hear mine without that now?" I looked at her. There was no performance in her face, no polished answer waiting. Just fear and hope sitting beside each other, trying not to touch. I set my soup down. Slowly, giving her time to move away, I reached for her hand. She looked at our fingers like she couldn't believe the world had allowed it. Her hand was warm. Her pulse jumped once, then steadied. I smiled. Still dramatic. She laughed, and the sound filled the dark clinic more gently than the storm. "I'm working on it." "I know." Outside, the rain fell over Alder Bay, over the inn on the cliff, over the high school hallway neither of us had to live in anymore. Alara squeezed my hand. Not to claim me, not to keep me secret, just to stay. And this time, I let myself stay too.